Dasein exists as a being that, in its being, is concerned about that being itself. Essentially ahead of itself, it has projected itself upon its potentiality of being before going on to any mere consideration of itself. In its project, it is revealed as something thrown and abandoned to the world. It falls prey to it in taking care of it. As care, that is, as existing in the unity of the entangled thrown project, this being end is disclosed as there. Being together with others mit anderen, it keeps itself in an average interpretedness that is articulated in discourse and expressed in language. Being in the world has always already expressed itself, and as being together with beings encountered within the world, it constantly expresses itself in addressing and talking over what is taken care of. The circumspect taking care of common sense is grounded in temporality, in the mode of making present that awaits and retains. As taking care in calculating, planning, preparing ahead, and preventing, it always already says, whether audibly or not, then. That will happen before. That will get settled now. That will be made up for that, on that former occasion failed or eluded us. In the then, taking care expresses itself in awaiting, retaining in the on that former occasion, and making present in the now. In the then, but for the most part inexplicitly lies the now not yet. That is, it is spoken in a making present that awaitingly retains or forgets. The on that former occasion contains the now no longer. With it, retaining expresses itself as a making present that awaits. The then and the on that former occasion are understood with regard to a now, that is, making present has a peculiar weight. Indeed, it always temporalizes itself in a unity with awaiting and retaining, even if these are modified into a forgetting that does not await. In this mode of forgetting, temporality gets caught in the present that primarily says now in making present. What taking care awaits as what is nearest to it is addressed in the right away. What has been made initially available or lost is addressed in the just now. The horizon of retaining that expresses itself in the on that former occasion is the earlier. The horizon for the then is the later on in the future. The horizon for the now is the today. But every then is, as such, a then when. Every on that former occasion is an on that former occasion when. Every now is a now that. We shall call this seemingly self-evident relational structure of the now, on that former occasion, and then datability. We completely leave aside the question whether this datability is factically carried out with regard to a date on the calendar. Even without such dates, the now and then, and on that former occasion are more or less dated in a definite way. If the dating is not made more definite, that does not mean that the structure of datability is lacking or is a matter of chance. What is that to which such datability essentially belongs, and what is datability based upon? But can a more superfluous question be raised than this one? With the now that, we mean after all a point in time, as one knows. The now is time. Undeniably we understand the now that, then when, on that former occasion when, in a way as also being connected with time. That all this means time itself, how that is possible, and what time signifies. These are matters of which we have no conception in our natural understanding of the now and so on. Is it then self-evident that we right away understand and naturally express something like now, then, and on that former occasion? Where do we get this now that? Do we find something like this among inner-worldly beings, among those that are objectively present? Obviously not. Have we found it at all? Have we ever started to look for it and ascertain it? It is always available to us without our ever having explicitly taken it over, and we make constant use of it, although not always in verbal expression. Even in the most trivial offhand kind of everyday talk, for example, it is cold. We also have in mind a now that. Why does Dasein express a now that, then when? On that former occasion when, in addressing what it takes care of, although mostly without verbalizing it. First, because in addressing itself to something interpretively, it expresses itself too, that is, it expresses its circumspect and understanding being together with things at hand that lets them be discovered and encountered. And secondly, because this addressing and discussing that also interprets itself is grounded in a making present, and is possible only as this. A making present that awaits and retains interprets itself. And that is again possible only because, in itself ecstatically open, it is always already disclosed to itself, and can be articulated in the interpretation that understands and speaks. Since temporality is ecstatically and horizontally constitutive of the clearness of the there, it is already always interpreted primordially in the there, and is thus familiar. The making present that interprets itself, that is, what has been interpreted and addressed in the now, is what we call time. What is made known in this is simply that temporality, recognizable as ecstatically open, is initially and for the most part known only in this interpretedness that takes care. But while time is immediately intelligible and recognizable, this does not, however, preclude the possibility that primordial temporality as such, as well as the origin temporalizing itself in it of expressed time, may remain unknown and unconceived. The fact that the structure of datability belongs essentially to what is interpreted with the now, then, and on that former occasion, becomes the most elemental proof that what has been interpreted originates from temporality interpreting itself. Saying now, we always already also understand a now that, without actually saying it. Why? Because the now interprets a making present of beings. In that now that lies the ecstatic nature of the present. The datability of the now, then, and on that former occasion, is the reflex widersheet of the ecstatic constitution of temporality, and is thus essential for time itself that has been expressed. The structure of the datability of the now, then, and on that former occasion is evidence for the fact that they stem from temporality and are themselves time. The interpretive expression of now, then, and on that former occasion is the most way of giving the time. The ecstatic unity of temporality that is understood along with datability, but unthematically and unrecognizable as such, Dasein has always already been disclosed to itself as being in the world, and interworldly beings have been discovered along with it. Because of this, interpreted time too always already has a date-stamped datarung on the basis of the beings encountered in the disclosedness of the there. Now that, the door slams, now that, my book is missing, etc. Because they have the same origin from ecstatic temporality, the horizons that belong to the now, then, and on that former occasion also have the character of datability as today when, later on when, and earlier when. If awaiting, understanding itself in the then, interprets itself, and in so doing as a making present, understands what it is awaiting in terms of its now, then the and now not yet already lies in the specification of the then. The awaiting that makes present understands the until then. Interpretation articulates this, until then, namely, it has its time as the in-between that also has a relation of datability. This relation is expressed in the meanwhile. Taking care can again articulate in awaiting the during itself by specifying further thens. The until then is subdivided by a number of from then, until thens that, however, have been embraced beforehand in the awaiting project of the primary then. The lasting is articulated in the understanding of the during that awaits and makes present. This duration is again the time revealed in the self-interpretation of temporality, a time that is thus actually, but unthematically, understood in taking care as a span. The making present that awaits and retains interprets a during with a span, only because in so doing it is disclosed to itself as being ecstatically stretched along in historical temporality, even though it does not know itself as this. But here a further peculiarity of time which has been specified shows itself. Not only does the during have a span, but every now, then, and on that former occasion is always spanned with the structure of datability, with a changing span, now in the intermission at dinner, in the evening in summer, then at breakfast while climbing, and so on. The taking care that awaits, retains, and makes present, allows itself time in this or that way and gives this time to itself in taking care, even without determining the time by any specific reckoning, and before any such reckoning has been done. Your time dates itself in one's actual mode of allowing oneself time heedfully. It does this on the basis of what is actually disclosed in what is taken care of in the surrounding world and in attuned understanding, that is, on the basis of what one does all day long. The more Dasein is absorbed in awaiting what is taken care of, and not awaiting itself, forgets itself, the more its time that it allows itself is covered over by this mode of allowing. In the everyday, just passing through life, that takes care, Dasein never understands itself as running along in a continuously enduring succession of sheer nows. On the basis of this covering over, the time that Dasein allows itself has gaps in it, so to speak. We often cannot bring a day together again when we come back to the time that we have used. Yet the time that has gaps in it does not go to pieces in this lack of togetherness. It is rather a mode of temporality that is always already disclosed and ecstatically stretched along. The mode in which time that is allowed elapses, and the way in which taking care gives that time to itself more or less explicitly, can be phenomenally explicated appropriately only if, on the one hand, we avoid the theoretical representation of a continuous stream of nows, and if, on the other hand, the possible modes in which Dasein gives and allows itself time are to be conceived of as primarily determined in terms of how it has its time in a manner corresponding to its actual existence. In an earlier passage, authentic and inauthentic existing were characterized with regard to the modes of the temporalizing of temporality upon which such existing is found. Accordingly, the irresoluteness of inauthentic existence temporalizes itself in the mode of a making present that does not await but forgets. The irresolute person understands himself in terms of the events and accidents nearest by that are encountered in such making present and urge themselves upon him in changing way. Busily losing himself in what is taken care of, the irresolute person loses his time in them, too. Hence his characteristic way of talking, "I have no time." Just as the person who exists inauthentically constantly loses time and never has any, it is the distinction of the temporality of authentic existence that in resoluteness it never loses time and always has time. For the temporality of resoluteness has, in regard to its present, the character of the moment. The moment's authentic making present of the situation does not itself take the lead, but is maintained in the future that has been. Existence defined by the moment augenblicklich existent temporalizes itself as fatefully whole, stretching along in the sense of the authentic, historical constancy of the self. This kind of temporal existence, constantly, has its time for that which the situation requires of it. But resoluteness discloses the there in this way only as situation. Thus the resolute person can never encounter what is disclosed in such a way that he could lose his time on it in an irresolute way. Factically thrown Dasein can take and lose time for itself only because a time is allotted to it as temporality ecstatically stretched along with the disclosedness of the there grounded in that temporality. As disclosed, Dasein exists factically in the mode of being with the other. It keeps itself in a public, average intelligibility. The now that, then when, interpreted and expressed in everyday being with one another, are understood in principle, although they are unequivocally dated only within limits. In the nearest being with one another, several people can say now together, and each can date the now in a different way, now that this or that happened. The now expressed is spoken by each one, in the publicness of being with one another in the world. The time interpreted and expressed by any particular Dasein is thus also always already made public as such on the basis of its ecstatic being in the world. Since everyday taking care understands itself in terms of the world taken care of, it knows the time that it takes for itself not as its own, but rather heedfully exploits the time that there is, the time with which they reckon. But the publicness of time is all the more compelling the more factical Dasein explicitly takes care of time by expressly taking it into account.